Welcome everyone. So my name is Advayasiddhi, and what we're going to do here, I'm going to give a little bit of a talk on Introduction to Buddhism, and we didn't quite know whether to call it a workshop or a talk because you'll discover it as I talk why we haven't quite figured out whether to call it workshop or a talk. So I hope that's okay with you, and just to see what happens. And please do just move forward a bit. It's fine if you need to leave halfway through, just do that. But it's a bit difficult for people to come in if there's no room. So if you feel happy, just inch forward a bit. Well, first of all, a really, really warm welcome to you, because we weren't sure if anyone was going to come on a Sunday morning after such a delightful festival to hear about Buddhism. So I'm personally really, really happy that you're here, because otherwise I wouldn't have anyone to talk to or talk with about Buddhism. So thanks for getting out of your tents and arriving, being present. I'm going to talk a bit about Buddhism, and I'm going to talk a bit about Buddhism in a way that is alive for me at this moment in time, with my experience, my knowledge. And maybe that is, if you met me yesterday or tomorrow, the talk would be slightly different. Yeah. And if you talk to someone else about Buddhism, they might say something slightly different. If you know of something about Buddhism, it might be slightly different. Yeah. And that's fine. Why I'm saying that at the beginning, I guess, is because sometimes when you do introductions to Buddhism, I end up feeling I'm the representative of all the Buddhist tradition, and I have to deliver the right Buddhism in the right way at the right time, and that's just impossible. Yeah. So I hope that with what I'm going to tell you a little bit about Buddhism, there will be enough Buddhism in there, there'll be enough Dharma in there for you to either grasp onto if you haven't heard about Buddhism before, or for you to recognize a little bit if you have. Yeah. But it's also an invitation to keep exploring Buddhism, and to keep, in a way, knowing that words and how we describe things, it is just words and concepts. In Buddhism we have this, there's an image, I think it comes from Zen Buddhism, about it's the finger pointing to the moon. Yeah. So I'm hoping I can be like a little bit of that finger pointing towards the moon, and I'm certainly not the moon. Yeah. So I'm just sort of inviting you, in a way, to listen with that in mind. Yeah. And I guess it's very closely connected in a certain sense to Buddhism itself, because Buddhism is something, is only something if it's practiced. So Buddhism only really exists when it's practiced. Yeah. So you reflecting, you listening, you making sense of things, that's already, in a way, practicing a bit of Buddhism. Yeah. Because Buddhism invites us to try and make sense of the world. It invites us to try and say, well, what is the truth? What is actually the truth about how things are, how we live, how our minds work? It's not asking us to take anything on face value. It's asking us to test things out. So the historical Buddha said, please test my teachings as if you test gold in a fire. Yeah. So please do that. Please do that. And I think that's, what I've been thinking about. I wrote to myself, why is Buddhism amazing? Why do I think Buddhism is amazing? And one of the reasons I think Buddhism is amazing is because Buddhism asks us to think for ourselves. Yeah. So Buddhism really, really wants us to try and engage with our minds, engage with our experience, engage with life. And say, what do I think? How do I make sense of this? So when we listen to the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, what do I think about it? How does it relate to my experience? How does it ring true for me? Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah, does that make sense, what I'm saying? Okay. So I guess, well, what is Buddhism saying? Yeah, what is Buddhism saying? Well, I guess one thing that Buddhism is saying, which we've, been exploring on this amazing festival, is that love is possible. Yeah, love is possible. Buddhism says freedom is possible. Freedom is possible. And Buddhism says that wisdom, insight is possible. Yeah. The trouble is that we tend to go looking for these things in the wrong places. And, well, there's nothing wrong with doing that. The only thing that's wrong with it is that it makes us unhappy. Yeah. So Buddhism says that all things that are conditioned will cause suffering because they are impermanent. Yeah. So if we, this beautiful festival, have come together of conditions, so many conditions. Just think of all the things you probably have done to get here. You might have had to borrow a tent of someone, you had to book a train ticket or get a lift with someone, talk to your friends, were you camping, you heard about it somewhere. All sorts of conditions have come into place for you to be here. People have put up this tent, Lokabandhu was putting mics and Peksha Priya's got the video going. It's like so many conditions for us to just be here. And those conditions, they come into being and they fade away, they change, things change. Yeah. So an hour ago you might have been in your tent or having your breakfast, now you're here, in an hour's time you're going to do something else. It's just how things are. Yeah. Can we agree with that? Things change? Yeah? Someone who don't think things change? I know this is a really stupid question, but I'm asking it anyway. Yeah. So in a way we know things change, but we don't know it as well. Because I know when I say yes to come and work here at the festival, I know that the festival will be for an X number of days and then something else happens. And still I might sometimes long to go home. And sometimes I think, I wish it lasted for a few days longer. Yeah. And that is just, if I hold on to those experiences, I'm causing myself suffering. Yeah. That's what the Dharma says anyway. And I think that's true. In my personal experience, I notice, well, when do I experience suffering? It's when I want things to be different than they are. So Buddhism basically says, well, human beings, if they are just running around in conditioned existence, they are often driven by greed, hatred and delusion. And as long as that's what drives us, we will experience suffering. Yeah. So if we react to the world by either wanting things, pushing them away, or don't caring about it, that will cause suffering. That's what Buddhism says. But Buddhism fortunately also says, well, we have enormous capacity for love, generosity, wisdom and freedom. So, sounds great, how can we get that? And for me personally, why I got into Buddhism, and actually it's very interesting, Lokabandhu, who was here before, he's the first order member I met. And it was in conversation with him that I realized Buddhism was so amazing because it helped me, it gave me like tools of how to get from all this, not all the time suffering, but the messiness of not quite knowing how I created suffering, and into a different way of being, which had more freedom and love and peace and wisdom, I think, or a glimpse of wisdom in it. Yeah. So Buddhism is also like a set of really practical tools that helps us get from where we are into something else. Yeah. Maybe into a bigger sense of ourselves, a deeper sense of ourselves, allowing more of our being to come into existence. So I'm just going to so I guess what I've been saying so far is like, well, Buddhism says suffering exists, And suffering exists because we grasp after things to be in a certain way to make us happy. And as long as we keep doing that, we will experience suffering. Yeah. So that's one element of it. Buddhism also says change is possible. Not only is change possible, but everything changes all the time. So impermanence exists. Impermanence is intrinsic to existence, to reality. And in a way, that can be such a positive aspect of our experience if we allow it to be. Yeah? Because impermanence and change means that also in every single moment we have the opportunity to act differently. Yeah? So we're not set. I'm not this set being that always have to be a certain way. And in a way that's completely mind-blowing, that I could be someone who just was really open to everyone, who saw through my own mind games, who was kind, who was helpful, who was aware and present. And it's like, I'm not always like that. And sometimes I think, why is it I keep doing the same things again and again and again? And I try and remind myself, well, actually every day, every morning, every moment, I have a new opportunity. If I'm aware, I can choose how I want to create the next moment. Yeah. So Buddhism, in a way, is inviting us to say, well, what is it I want to bring into my life, into the world? And it says that no matter who we are, no matter how old or how young, which country, which nationality, which background, which family, no matter who we are, we can change. Yeah. So no matter what we've done in our lives, if we've been good all our lives, always done the right things, or if we've been horrible to people, we always have the opportunity to change. We always have the opportunity to change our minds, to work with our minds. We might not be able to do very much to begin with about the world outside us, but we can always change our minds. We can always work with how are we relating to the world, to other people, to our experience. Yeah? So I wanted to just have a little, have you to sort of be engaged a bit with each other, because personally I find listening to a talk for an hour really, really tough going. That's why I sort of was a bit resistant to the idea of giving a talk. So I thought I would just ask you to speak to maybe a few people around you and sort of talk about, well, have you experienced yourself on this festival that you might have been slightly different than you would have been at home? Or how have you experienced that? Yeah? It could just be that you've been using compost loose. You know, that's different than at home for most of us. Yeah? So it could be very small, banal things, or it could be something like you had a sense of expansion in your being because you've been to a workshop or something. Yeah? So just sort of find a few people around you and share that. Is that okay? So in a way, how have you experienced yourself a bit differently while you've been here? Okay? Yeah. So how many of you had experienced yourself slightly differently? Put your hands up. How many hadn't experienced anything different at all? No hands. Okay. So do we believe that change is possible? Yeah? So what stops us from changing more? What stops us from being kind? What stops me when I'm rushing to work and I think I just want to get in front of some person on the metro? And what stops me, why don't I just think, I'll just be kind. I'll just let this person come in front of me. Mm-hmm.
One thing I find we were talking in our group is been finding really helpful is that other people around me are doing similar things.
So other people around you are doing similar things to you here. That makes it easier for you to be different. Yeah? Yeah.
That's to be present all the time.
Say that again?
Being here about that's to be present all the time.
You are present, yeah.
If you're in a rush hour and you're thinking about getting to work, you're not present with other people, so you don't notice them.
Exactly. So when I'm rushing to work, it's very easy to forget that actually I'm surrounded by living beings who are...
Thinking about the future, being late.
I'm thinking about the future, I might be late. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe, yeah.
I think we all feel we have a connection here because we're coming with a sort of similar mindset, whereas outside you don't know what everyone else is up to.
So maybe could that be a sense of connection and trust maybe? Yeah, because we have a similar mindset. We sort of trust the space. Yeah.
And I think when you're on the metro, you think everyone's kind of out for themselves, and it kind of, whatever attitude is around you, kind of adopt yourself as well.
So
like, they don't care about me, I don't care about them.
So they don't care about me, I don't care about them. Yeah. And the attitude around us really affects us. That is a bit similar to what's said here, isn't it? People really matter, or conditions matter. I think it's some really important points that you have. Something to do with awareness about where is my where am I? Something to do with conditions around us. Something to do with being connected. Yeah. So, Buddhism or the Dharma says, well, actually, it's really, really hard to practice the Dharma. It's really hard to try and change our minds into being kinder, being wiser, being more aware. And it's partly because our minds tend to, if we leave them alone, sometimes they just go into greed, hatred, and delusion. And sometimes it might be because life is busy, we need to earn money, get the kids to school, or whatever we need to do. And sometimes it's because we feel really disconnected, yeah? So if we feel really disconnected from other beings, it's very, very hard to feel kind towards them. It's also really hard to feel kind towards ourselves, usually. But it's like, if I don't know people, it's much easier to be, a bit, I'll just get in front of you, yeah? If it's a really good friend, it's like, oh yeah, please, yeah? Do you have that experience? You don't jump the queue in front of a good friend as much as you might do with someone you don't like, maybe? Yeah? Maybe this is just something I've ever, but anyway. I don't know if you've heard about, there is a meditation practice. Well, I guess in the tradition that I come from, we tend to teach 2 meditation practices, and I think they're brilliant. Because one is very much to do with awareness, helping us to cultivate awareness. The other is about cultivating friendliness and kindness, the Metta Bhavana meditation. And those of you who don't know it, it's very interesting because you're actually trying to cultivate kindness towards yourself, towards someone you like, towards someone you don't know, and towards someone you don't like. Yeah? So you're trying to somehow open up that space and that usual way of relating to the world that says, okay, I like you, I don't like you, and I don't care about you. Yeah? So, okay, there's a human being here, and there's a human being here, and there's a human being here, and here. Yeah? So, it's like it's going in and trying to sort of unscrew a bit of some of our views about how the world is put together. Yeah, it's trying to help us see, okay, there is beings. And the way that I try and sometimes do the Metta Bhavana is when I'm on a train or on a bus or something, I'm realizing, okay, these are just beings around me. They're not just objects in my way to get on the metro. Yeah, they're actually living beings. Yeah. You can do that when you're in a queue, you can do that here. And I think that's so precious about being on the festival here. And what Buddhafield creates is that you realize these are human beings you're around. And you feel safe enough to be friendly with them. Yeah, you feel safe enough to look at them, to smile, maybe talk to them, let them in front of you in the queue if they're in a hurry. That sort of happens much more easily because you feel you can relax a bit more, you feel they're friendly towards you. Yeah. So Buddhism it's very interesting. It's like Buddhism or the Dharma is saying, well, it's very, very difficult to do this, but here are some tools. And the Metta Bhavana is one tool. Also, inbuilt in Buddhism, you can say, is a tool. In that community is really, really important in Buddhism. So the Buddhist word for it is Sangha. So the community you have with other people who are trying to practice the same thing as you. The fact that you're not alone in the whole world trying to do this. So both that you're reminded with other people, okay, how do we do this? How do we explore how to be kinder, to be more aware, to be wiser? And also that you can sometimes be lucky enough to meet people who have a little bit more experience, or maybe a lot more experience of you in doing this. And they are just very kind, very present, very aware. Yeah. And that, like, oh, it opens up a door. Hey, this is possible. Yeah. So you might have had that experience here on the festival of maybe meeting someone, talking to someone, hearing about their life, and it's like, oh, wow, if they can do that, maybe I can do that too. Yeah? Have you had that experience maybe? Or someone has been to a workshop and told you about it and had an amazing experience, and you think, maybe I could go. Yeah? Or you meet someone and you think, oh, they're really kind, or they just really seem very together, or very peaceful, or very clear. Yeah, I've certainly had lots of those experiences here, thinking, wow, what amazing people. You know, they really embody this or that or the other quality. Yeah. And just being very impressed with, you know, people being very honest about themselves, people being very open, people really working with themselves, trying to look at their mind, look at how it's functioning, look at how they can change it into have a little bit more love, a little bit more consideration. So I think that sense of the importance of community, it's like, well, it's inbuilt in Buddhism. And we really get such a beautiful experience of that here, because we get, as you say, to be with people who allow us to try and be a bit different. Yeah. And I think a way of practicing is also seeking out places where we can allow ourselves to be a bit different. So when you go to a Buddhist center, for example, it's very interesting, or a Buddhist group, you meet all sorts of people. And I've taught various places. And what I sometimes find is very interesting, when people are a bit away from their usual conditions, they are a bit more open to think differently. So where I teach, there's a range of people who come from other countries. And it's almost like, because they're away from their normal everyday life, they're a bit more, okay, how do I want to be? How can I be? You know, that opportunity is a bit bigger. And I think a festival like this is like that. You know, you're away from your normal conditions, you meet other people, you have a chance of thinking, oh, maybe I can be a bit more like the thing I'm really longing for. Maybe I can be a bit kinder, a bit more aware. Yeah. I guess another thing that's very interesting and connected with what you were saying about awareness, well, we're often not very present. And one thing I've noticed, well, I lost my watch on the festival, so it's not particularly handy when you're giving talks, I can tell you, but it has been very interesting, because in a way it's that sense of just, let go a bit of time, And that sense of when you're rushing, when you know, okay, I have to be there at this time, I have to, get a bus, or I have to meet someone. Well, how present can we then be in what we're doing? Yeah. And that sense of, well, our life is only made up of present moments. So if we miss the present moment, we will miss our life in a way. Yeah. It's a pretty scary thought, I think. So that sense of, well, how can we be present? Yeah. And I guess what I wanted to do is just do a little grounding exercise with us, because I know sort of we're taking ideas, so like change the gear a little bit. So I suggest you stand up if you're happy to do that. And some of you will have done this zillions of times, but some of you might never have done this before. So find a spot where you're sort of standing as flatly as you can in this tent. And have your feet flat on the ground, and on the same, don't stand on an edge of a carpet, stand as flat as you can. And try and have the side or the insides of your feet, try and have them parallel. I don't quite know why, it's something to do with how we stand, but that seems to do the trick. And maybe just take a few breaths while you stand here. Just notice that you are actually breathing. And if you want, you can put a hand on your belly. Just maybe that helps you to connect with your breath. And if you want to, you can try and imagine that on the top of your head is a string that's holding your body up. And you can just bend your knees slightly so you really feel the weight of your body going into the ground underneath you. And if you want, you can have your eyes closed. It's up to you. And try to really notice the contact between the soles of your feet and the ground underneath you. And if you want, you can just very gently go a little bit to the side, so sway a little bit. And just feel how that changes the contact with the soles of your feet and the floor. And then just come back to where you started and stand still. Breathe. Allowing yourself to take in whatever experience is going on. Sounds, smells, touch. So I'm going to round this little exercise off in a minute, so you can just prepare yourself to let your awareness soon be a bit more outwards again. So just, you can move slightly, move your body a bit, move your fingers. When you feel ready to, you can open your eyes if you've had them closed, and just gently, quietly sitting down again at your own pace. So, how was that? Was it easy? Was it nice? Were you distracted? Were you here?
I noticed lots of uncomfortable body sensations.
You noticed uncomfortable body sensations, yeah?
But that's okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because they're there, there's nothing. I can't really get away from them, so.
Yeah?
But noticing them I find quite useful.
So
That's what my body's feeling.
Yeah, yeah. So so you noticed uncomfortable body sensations, and then that felt fine, in a certain sense? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah?
I just find being reminded about feet, contact with the ground is just very, very helpful for me.
Yeah.
Seems to be a thing that I constantly forget and somehow connected to the ground. And I actually work with someone that doesn't wear shoes. I mean, this is in London, central London, that doesn't wear shoes, winter, whenever.
Gosh.
And I always slightly thought, God, but I kind of get it because it's very grounding, like literally.
Yeah. So there was something very useful in the grounding experience. Yeah. What happened that you found was useful?
Just feeling slightly less heady, I suppose, slightly less, in my brain, ruminations and that kind of stuff. Thoughts.
Yeah. Less thoughts.
Yeah.
A bit more body, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found it easier than I would have done before I came here.
You found it easier than you would have done 5 days ago or a week ago when you were somewhere else. Yeah. And is that conditions, do you reckon?
I think I'm just more relaxed here.
You're more relaxed. Yeah. 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 I guess it's interesting because it's what we try and do. I don't know. Did any of you get distracted? Yeah. Okay. I got distracted several times. By the music, by thinking, oh, I'm giving this talk, do I know what I'm doing? That sort of thing. And then it's like, oh, back to my feet, my breathing, connecting, just listening, just being here. Oh, thought, back again, yeah? So, well, it's very interesting because in a way, what the historical Buddha, well, of course we don't quite know because we weren't there, but there is this really beautiful story of the historical Buddha giving a teaching to someone about the Dharma, and he says, in the seen, only the seen, in the heard, only the heard, in the cognized, only the cognized. Yeah. So that sense of, well, just hearing, just sensing, grounding, being, that's not problematic. It's what we do with it. Yeah. So it's the thoughts, it's the thinking about our train tickets home, it's the who am I meeting for chai, it's all that stuff that gets us out of the present moment. Yeah. And that is usually what tenses us up a bit as well. Yeah. So if we are here, we feel relaxed, we feel welcome to be who we are, we feel accepted as we are in this space. And that makes it easier for ourselves to accept ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, to just, okay, I'm here, this is my experience. Yeah. And very interesting, unpleasant bodily sensations, they're not a problem. Yeah. And I think that's very, very interesting. I work sometimes with people who live with chronic pain and try and help them a bit through mindfulness in terms of, well, our experience is not the problem. It's what we do with experience that creates problems. Because experience is going to be pleasant or painful or neutral. Yeah. It's what we do with that experience that tend to cause us problems, yeah. So eating a piece of chocolate and finding it really, oh, this is really nice chocolate. Or, wow, there's a really beautiful woman walking across the field. Or this workshop is fantastic or something. That's not the problem. It's the I want. That's the problem. Or that's what Buddhism says, yeah. So can you recognize that? Yeah? So what happens when we want something? What happens when we see a beautiful woman walking across the field and think, oh, that's a really beautiful woman, or a really beautiful man, or a really beautiful dress, whatever we think. Something, wow, that's beautiful. Yeah? What happens? Yeah?
Push away what they want because they'll say, I love this, but I can't afford it, and they'll be like, of course that woman's beautiful, but she's out of my league or something.
So it could be, this person is out of my league, yeah, so I'm not good enough or something.
It causes disappointment and insecurity.
It causes disappointment, yeah.
Like if you see a flower, just appreciate its beauty, like pick it and make it your own. Just try to appreciate beauty from the flowers. Like
Yeah.
There's an immediate tension caused by the wanting.
There's tension caused by the wanting, isn't
yes,
there?
And whether it's because you try, what you either are wanting or think you're not capable of getting, or whatever.
Yeah, you might. There might. It's stories go on. Yeah. Yeah.
You're trying to change the world around you.
You try and change the world around you.
You're trying to change it.
Yeah. And are we very successful in changing the world around us? Does that work? Sometimes,
Probably not
yeah.
the way we want.
Sometimes better than others. Yeah. So you could go up to this beautiful woman, a beautiful man, and say, "Hey, do you want a cup of chai?" You know, that might be one option. Yeah. But what if you cling all your happiness onto that? Is that going to be successful?
You won't achieve what you want. If you go beyond the now, you probably won't achieve what you want.
It's very interesting. If you go beyond the now, you won't achieve what you want. Yeah. It's a gamble. Yeah. It's very interesting because, well, Buddhism is very clear about, well, our actions have consequences. So we act, we are interconnected, we affect things. And it's really important to do that and affect things in a way that we want to affect things. So if we want to go out for chai with this beautiful man or woman, well, do ask them out for chai. But if you think your entire happiness is going to be solved by that, you're going to create a lot of suffering. Yeah. So Buddhism, in a way, is saying, well, yeah, we need to act in the world. And it doesn't have that much to say about going out for cups of chai, I must say. I haven't seen that, but maybe I haven't read it the right places. But what it does have something to say about is, in a way, well, we have this human experience which is full of all this quite complex things. Sometimes we feel really generous and we are in the present moment, and sometimes we feel really needy and we need things or want things. And fortunately, and I think for me personally that's so helpful, Buddhism has some ethical guidelines, some ethical helpful tools of how to make sense of how to act in the world. Yeah? And it doesn't have a judgment of whether we are good or bad beings. It's just saying, well, if you want to create more happiness, more freedom and less suffering, this is the way to act. Yeah? And it's up to you. And you can test it. See if it works. Don't take it face value, test it out. The first way that Buddhism talks about that is, well, basically hatred is never going to cease by hatred. Hatred will only cease by love. So metta or maitri, loving kindness, is such a fundamental principle that we as Buddhists are trying to move more and more towards. So in a way, well, how can I move away from harming beings, intentionally harming beings, and towards intentionally being kind? Yeah. And I'm not just doing that in a sort of flaky, wouldn't it be lovely if everyone was really happy and kind to each other? But I'm actually trying to take on reality of things. I'm trying to take on when I feel really grumpy and think, I don't want to be kind. You know, okay, how can I try and be kind in that moment? To myself and to other beings. Yeah. So what we just did, the grounding, like what is my experience actually? Might have uncomfortableness, I might be grumpy, I might have whatever else going on. But what I do with that, I can choose if I have awareness. Yeah. So if I can open and in a way soften and be kind with my experience, I have a choice of what to do with it. And that's where sort of ethics comes in a way. Because Buddhist ethics is saying, well, try and move towards something and away from something. So it's not saying, oh, this is good, this is bad. It's more like, what movement are you trying to bring your being in, and therefore the world? Yeah? And that's the invitation again and again in every single moment. Where are we trying to move towards right this moment? What's our mind doing? What's our heart doing? So the first sort of precepts, as they're called, is like, well, moving away from harming other beings, moving towards loving kindness. Yeah. And I really, really love the fact that it's a moving away from and towards, because it just means, well, you know, some days we might be in one space and that's fine. Well, how do we move away and towards from there? Other days we might be really expansive and loving, and, well, we just move from there, you know. So the starting point isn't the problem. It's like, what do we do with it? So that's really the first fundamental principle. But it has wisdom as well. It's just like, okay, kindness is sometimes saying no, kindness is sometimes being angry, taking responsibility for that, or saying, I'm really sorry I upset you or something, you know. We make mistakes, we mess things up, we're complex. Well, at least, okay, how can I try and deal with that? Yeah? Does that make sense? That's the first of the precepts. The second is about moving away from taking things. So taking what's not given and moving towards being more generous. Towards ourselves, with our time, with our life, with our energy, with our money, with our wisdom. Yeah? And again, it's not because the Buddha said this is a bad thing to do or a good thing to do. The Buddha says if you want to suffer less, if you want to be freer and happier, this is how to live. Yeah? So the Buddha says taking things from people creates suffering. Taking what's not given creates suffering. Practicing generosity, sharing, creates freedom and happiness. Yeah? Do you think that might be true? Could it be true? I don't know about you, but I noticed that if I have been in a rush and I try and take something like jump the queue or something, I don't do that very often, so I don't know why I keep using that example. But anyway, let's say I did that. There's part of me that just gets really sad because I've taken something, and I don't get happiness out of that. I tend to get a bit, that was useless, you know. I don't get a sense of I got in front of them. Yeah.
What do you feel if someone does it to you?
If someone jumps the queue in front of me?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think it depends a bit on the day. I was queuing for the toilets earlier, and I saw someone was trying to jump the queue, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, and someone said to them, "Wait, there's a queue." And I was just thinking, when it was my turn, you know, you're the next one waiting, all these people behind you, and I just thought, oh well, I wonder if someone is trying to jump the queue in front of me. So that's going to be okay. But in a different day, I might have thought, you know, hey, you're jumping into queue, you know. So I guess it depends. But the interesting thing for me is not I hope my initial response is going to be kinder and kinder and kinder the more I practice. But it's not always kind. But it's like, okay, so I'm getting really, you know, on my high horse about this. So, okay, I'm really on my high horse about this, but maybe they need the loo more than me, you know. So I guess I try and bring some reflection, some awareness to what my reaction is. And by doing that, I have freedom again. Yeah? Does that answer it?
It's about making a choice in the moment, really, because sometimes you do have to put yourself first if you're absolutely bursting.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you do have to say, hey, actually, I was here first.
Yeah.
Yeah? Exactly. But I guess that's the interesting thing is you make a choice. You make a choice. And in that moment of awareness and choice, that's where freedom arrives. Yeah. So you have the freedom to choose, in a way, what you want to do in that moment. Are you going to be generous towards yourself or towards this person? What do you feel is most needed? Yeah. So the third precept, very interesting on a festival like this, is moving away from sexual misconduct. Yeah? And what do you think it's moving towards? I know some of you know it, but what do you think it's moving towards? If it's moving away from sexual misconduct, and in Buddhism it's quite important to say sexual misconduct is not. It's very different in Buddhism from how it might be defined in other religions or other traditions. In Buddhism, sexual misconduct is having sex that causes suffering to yourself or other beings. Yeah, so it's usually described as rape, sex with children, sex with someone else's wife or husband. Yeah. So what do you think the opposite is? What do you think you're moving towards? Respect? Yeah? What else?
Generosity.
Generosity, yeah. Patience. Compassion, yeah. Commitment, yeah.
Reciprocation. Two-way.
Okay, yeah. It's a two-way thing, yeah. You might have to sort of expand on that a bit more. I'm not...
Rather than uneven relationships.
Oh, yeah. So something about that you're more even or equals or something, yeah. Yeah, okay. Very interesting.
Curling, jaw-dropping sex that leads to love and kindness.
Okay, yeah, well, we could make that a precept for Buddhafield or something. It sounds like you've had a good festival. So, cool. Well, maybe you have to work on that for the next time there's a festival. See what you can come up with of special Buddhafield precepts. In the Dharma, the precept that is the moving towards is stillness, simplicity, and contentment. And it's quite interesting because in a way, well, that's like sometimes it's being content with whatever status you're in, you know. It's like you can spend the whole festival running around looking for someone to hook up with. That's just not very enjoyable, is it? I mean, sometimes it might be, but some friends of mine, they've been like, oh, how can I get a date? And the whole thing about the festival might be about getting a date. So they are not really present on the festival, yeah? So that sense of sometimes just being content with whatever you've got going for you. Well, that could be creating less suffering, yeah? And also sometimes creating spaces where you know, I'm just giving myself a break from this. Yeah, because it takes a lot of energy. It usually pulls us out of ourselves. I don't know about you, but like if you fall in love, is it easy to not think about the other person? No? Is it? Yeah? Okay. So when you do, those of you who've done the metta bhavana, is it easy to think about the difficult person? The fourth stage, the person you don't like? No, not very easy. Really easy to think about people you're in love with, yeah? Our minds just go there. So there's a lot of energy in the whole sex thing. And it's quite interesting that Buddhism says, well, there's nothing wrong with having sex and have it as you like it and as much as you like or little as you like, but just notice that the consequences. And in a way, sometimes that sense of just reflecting on the consequences of what you do in terms of, well, am I upsetting other people? You know, am I going off with my best friend's ex or something? Am I, am I not honest? So those sort of things, they're sort of implied in this, but it's quite an interesting area because especially here, people are more open, feel more free, and they're like, oh yeah, let's go off and do something. But hey, what's the framework? You know, what's the sort of conditions we do that under, and try and bring that in there as well. Well, maybe next time. Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused because are you saying that intentions are bad? For example, the intention to spend the day doing some workshops. Or the intention to go out and try to find a date?
No. I'm not. That wasn't. Sorry. Maybe I wasn't clear. I think what I was trying to get at was noticing how much planning and ideas and desire can get us completely out of the present moment. Yeah. So planning and there's nothing wrong with wanting a date. You know, it's great. I know. Lovely, so many people had great dates. I've heard of a dating workshop somewhere. But it's like, if that's where your energy goes all the time, you're not really going to be present with yourself in this moment. Yeah. So the problem is not that it goes out there. The problem is if we keep letting it go out there, it will create suffering. Yeah. Does that make sense?
And there's part of that about that sometimes that might be used as a way of getting away from what you might be feeling in the present moment.
I guess that would be a sort of out thing. I mean, the precept in itself is more like, are you creating suffering with how you're behaving?
Yeah. So it's about the honesty of that moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's, I guess also because it's interesting. I gave a talk not that long ago about Buddhist wisdom and romantic love, and it was quite funny. It was much better attended than any other talks that we've done for a while. So, but we were talking in that with the people there about, well, are we realistic? You know, are we realistic when we're in love or when we want sex with someone? And, you know, very often, and again, you might be of a different species than the people I was giving this talk to, but they were like, no, we're not realistic. You know, we're not realistic. We're not objective about ourselves or the situation or the people. And I think in particular when we are in situations that we really want something, it's very, very helpful to have some sort of ethical guidelines to reflect on. Because it's like, well, am I being kind to myself, to other people? Am I considering that I'm actually connected with other people? So I'm not just acting in a void. I'm acting in a web of connections, yeah, in conditions that affect each other. And it's not saying, oh, we always need to, don't act. It's like, do act, but try and have at least some sense of awareness and kindness with you. And we're going to get it wrong and mess things up, and that's fine. You know, just try again. Yeah? Is that okay? Yeah? Well, we can come back to that in a second. There seemed to be interest in this, as always is. I'm just going to mention the last two precepts, because I think they are really, well, they're probably also important in this area. So the fourth precept is about honesty. So it's moving away from untruthfulness. I've just completely lost the other word that we sometimes use for it, but it's moving towards truthful communication. Yeah. So it's moving towards truthful communication. You can say sort of, it could be both honesty towards ourselves and honesty towards others. Yeah. So telling lies, making things up, not being honest tends to cause suffering, is what the Dharma says. Being honest, being clear with ourselves, clear with others, tends to bring freedom. Yeah. Again, these things are practiced under the heading of kindness. So honesty, well, it's in the precepts we talk a bit about the first three precepts. So the one about kindness, the one about generosity, and the one about sex is to do with our body, how we act with our body often. It obviously involves our speech a lot, but the honesty, you could say, well, it could involve the body, you know, but also it's very, very much to do with how we speak, how we communicate. Are we kind and honest in how we communicate? Well, then we're likely to create more freedom and happiness. If we are harsh, if we lie, we are likely to create suffering. Yeah. I don't know about you, but one of the things I really value here is that people are very honest about themselves, honest about their experience, and there is the freedom to do that. And I think that is partly, you know, what creates such a special atmosphere here, because that honesty is possible. And the kindness is there for people to be honest. Yeah. So I'm much more likely to let someone jump the queue here than I would other places, because I would feel, well, if they say I really need the loo, well, they're honest with me. Yeah. Where, I mean, I probably would in a supermarket or something, but here I just trust people much more. And that's something probably I could, well, how can I trust people more outside? Yeah. Last precept, moving away from intoxicants. Using intoxicants that clouds the mind, moving towards clarity, mindfulness, awareness. And again, the festival is a beautiful example of that, because there's a no drinks, no drugs policy here. So that sense that actually people are like, oh, I had such a good time, and I was there, you know, I remember what happened. Some people come and say that to me after the festival, and they're amazed that they can actually enjoy themselves without being off their head on something. Yeah? So that's one element of it. If we're intoxicated, we're not going to be in the present moment. If we're not in the present moment, the likelihood of us acting in ways that are helpful and not harmful sometimes becomes very small. So I don't drink that much alcohol anymore, but I used to when I was young. Not loads, but I have certainly tried in my life to drink alcohol. And haven't done very stupid things, but I might have done things that have been a little bit like, oh, okay, maybe I could have done that better. And I've got a friend, and when he drinks alcohol, he just blanks out. Yeah, he just blanks out. He has no idea what's happened to him. He can lose things, he can hurt himself. He's fortunately a very friendly person, so he tends to just carry on being friendly. But it's not particularly helpful for him. For other people, they might, have you ever done anything stupid when you were drunk or on drugs? No? Good. I mean, it's a bit of a silly question because most people, they have in small or bigger ways, yeah? You might have lost your wallet, you might have lost your phone, you might have called someone up, you might have sent a really, really embarrassing text to someone, or email, whatever. Those sort of things, we do that when we're intoxicated, yeah? So in a way, how do we practice mindfulness, clarity, being present, not being caught in our heads, our ideas, our desires? Yeah, how can we practice being present? So I think what I would like you to do is maybe just, again, turn to a few people and just, or maybe just one other person, and say, is there one of these precepts that I would like to try and practice for the rest of today? Yeah? So I'm just going to remind you about them. So the first one is moving away from harming towards kindness. The second one is moving away from taking things that are not given towards generosity. The third one is moving away from sexual misconduct towards contentment. The fourth one is moving away from telling lies towards truthfulness, honesty. And the fifth one is moving away from intoxication towards clarity, mindfulness. Yeah? So just turn to one other person and talk about what precept would you like to practice for the rest of today. Just to try it out. I guess why I'm asking you to do this is because to get a sense of Buddhism, if you haven't already, is, I think, the most important thing is to really sense this is something you can practice. Yeah? It's not just a nice idea, it's actually something that you can use in your life. When you are in the loo queue, or when you're eating your dinner, when you're talking to someone, you can actually practice these things, yeah? And sometimes it's very, very helpful to just pick one of the precepts and try that out for a day. How does this affect me if I'm thinking about this today? Yeah? Has most of you picked one? Yeah? Do you have a sense of how you could practice this today? Does that feel easy? Do you want to share it? Yeah? No? You haven't picked one?
It's hard to just pick one.
It's hard to pick just one, okay.
It seems that all of them are just here already.
Yeah?
It's hard to focus on just one.
Yeah? So you just feel like you just want to carry on with the flow of things. Yeah? That's great. Did anyone else find it hard to pick one, or have you picked one? Yeah?
I think for me it's moving more towards truthful communication.
Yeah?
Mostly within myself.
Yeah.
In terms of not telling myself that I'm always fine when I'm not.
Yeah, yeah.
And also with the people around me.
Yeah.
Insisting that I'm fine when I'm not.
Yeah. So truthful communication in the sense of actually being honest with yourself about how you're experiencing yourself, and also then being honest with other people about it. It sounds to me it sounds like there's also a lot of kindness in there of just actually what's going on. Yeah, what's actually my experience. Well, great. Yeah. Do you know how to do that? Is it enough to just think about it, do you think?
I think to think about it and also to share with people I'm here with.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great. Yeah. I think the thing is sometimes we forget what it is our values are because life happens, yeah? And life can be very convincing. Other people can be very convincing. As you say, well, they might say I'm okay and I'm not okay. So finding ways to sort of remind ourselves, what is it that my values are? What is it my experiences? And that's where mindfulness is so useful. So like that grounding experience we did earlier, it's like if we can get some moments in our day where we reconnect a bit. Okay, what is it I'm doing? You know, what was it that was important to me? And even if it's small ways, it will really, really have an effect, because we'll get used to, oh, actually I can affect how I am. I don't need to just go with what everyone else says I am. I can affect how I relate to myself and to other beings. Yeah. So some drops of awareness that remind you, this is important to me. And talking to some friends about it's great. You have awareness, they witness you. Yeah. Saying, I want to do this a bit more. And that's partly why I got you to talk to each other. So someone else knows that you are going to do this. Yeah. You've been witnessed. Is that okay? Yeah. I'm going to wrap up because I realised I had a bit less time than I thought I did. So thanks, Priya, for reminding me. Obviously, the no watch experience has really got into my being now. I guess just to sort of come back to the beginning in a way, well, what is Buddhism saying? Buddhism says freedom is possible. Freedom is possible. It says suffering arises because our mind goes through greed, hatred and delusion. And that causes suffering. Yeah. If our mind, if our hearts can just be with experience as it is, let it arise and pass away, let it arise and pass away, we won't suffer. It's really difficult to do. But change is possible. Yeah. So just as we've created these beautiful conditions here, so we can keep creating conditions in our minds and hearts and in our lives, that will have an effect which is more towards happiness and freedom and less suffering. Yeah. So keep coming back and keep reminding ourselves, okay, maybe when I'm on the metro late for work and I'm thinking about something completely different, if I in that moment, oh, it's possible to be different, then I have freedom of choice. Yeah. I can respond differently. I'm suddenly got an opportunity to decide, am I going to rush on or am I going to notice this is people? I'm here. So I hope, if nothing else, I know this is a bit of a ramble, but I mean, you can read books on Buddhism and it's all really neat laid out. I'm not very neat laid out, so you have to you can get that somewhere else. I guess the main point is Buddhism says suffering is optional. Suffering is optional, yeah. We can actually do something with our minds and hearts that lessens suffering. And we can change, no matter how much we mess things up or what state of mind we're in or who we are. We always have the possibility for change. And if we remind ourselves and each other about that, what a fantastic world we can create, really. So I encourage you to go test it out. Really check it out. Is this working? Is this true? Does this work for me? How does it affect my life, my heart? And I really, really wish you well with that, because I think it's amazing. I think the Buddhist teachings are amazing. So good luck.